Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our class on the Black African People Cost. No, they are not. Go share the message if you can, because right now you are going to find out some very interesting things that will be an encouragement and a surprise to you. So today's topic is African contribution to Western European civilization. African contribution to Western European civilization. So here we go. In this teaching, we will get acquainted with creators of Europe history in the post-Medieval period. So this is after the Moors have ruled Europe, and so the blacks remained in Europe. And so, of course, most of the black people were expelled from Europe, but some of them, remained here. So, and they contributed to the building of the modern Europe that we have today, especially the cultural and civilization, the European civilization that followed. So appearance of racism is linked to the era of geographical discoveries by Europeans that gave start to the so-called modern age Europe. Yeah, the Europeans, the discrimination and racism started because of course, the presence of Moors, because they came here and they dominated Europeans and they oppressed them. And so, of course, that brought some hatred. And so when they left Europe, they went to Africa and other parts of the world. They became powerful and their civilization had grown. Then they went with a vengeance, and dominated other parts of the world, Africa especially. Theories of ancestral inferiority of some peoples were shaped to justify colonization policies that were often accompanied by extermination or enslavement of local inhabitants. According to racist standpoints, racial differences have a decisive influence on history and culture. You will be able to confirm the opposite, not only in terms of African and black people civilizations considered earlier, but also in terms of specific persons that lived in the period of development of racism and is living refutation. The people of the modern age in Europe was determined by spiritual and cultural factors. The period of the modern age in Europe was determined by spiritual and cultural factors. It will therefore be very important to pay attention to the spiritual and cultural life of African notable figures. So there were popular Africans in Europe at that time. And they're in my book, how Africans brought civilization to Europe. So we're going to be talking about the civilization that these Africans brought. In relation to Western Europe, we will focus on individuals who influenced music, literature, spirituality, philosophy, and politics, because these are the things that people think are the basis of civilization in Europe. But even in that area, apart from the war and military part of Europe, even in the area of culture, literature, music, and philosophy, politics, you will see black men playing a prominent role in developing these things in Europe. In addition to their achievements, little known facts concerning their ties to their African roots will also be highlighted. Now, Joseph Ballon de Saint-Georges, a French composer by nickname Black Mozart, Joseph Ballon, Black Mozart they called him, was a French composer of classical music, conductor, violin virtuoso, royal musketeer, who received a nickname Black Mozart. His mother was an African slave and his father was a French plantation owner born in the French colony of Guadeloupe. He achieved the highest social status in France thanks to his fencing skills and genius in European classical music. His diverse career is beautifully depicted in a painting by Mathera Brown, an American historical artist, painted in London in 1787. The portrait depicts him dressed as a conductor, but instead of his baton, he is holding his sword. He was later named Chevalier de Saint-Georges, which was a noble title. Europeans at that time considered Africans an inferior race, and because of his African origin, because that was colonization period, St. George was restricted in many rights under the French law. Mixed marriages were banned at that time because they wanted to banish all the memory of Moors who had ruled over them. And as he found himself part of a despised social class of mulattoes, however, thanks to his continuing efforts, he not only succeeded, but also overcame the existing racial barriers. During his education, by day, he learned mathematics, history, foreign languages, music, drawing, and dancing. And after that, he studied fencing. The son of his teacher, a famous fencer, Nicolas Texier de la Boissière, stated that even at the age of 15, he won from the best fencing masters, and at 17, he developed the highest speed of movement one could imagine. He was often seen swimming to the other bank of the Seine using only one arm. In running, he was one of the fastest in Europe. He mastered harpsichord and violin, and he was accepted into the Royal Gendarmerie as a violin virtuoso. He gave concerts in England and France. St. George also became a member of a famous French composer, Gossec Orchestra, and soon became his conductor. In the Music Almanac magazine, the orchestra was named the best in Paris and perhaps in Europe. He then headed the Masonic Olympic Lodge Orchestra. He was one of the first black Masons in France. Masons. The orchestra ordered 6 so-called Paris symphonies from the Austrian composer Haydn, and under the direction of Chevalier de Saint-Georges, played them for the first time. French Queen Marie Antoinette attended the premiere, and she loved the 85th symphony, which was then hence named the Queen. French King Louis XVI was going to appoint Chevalier de Saint-Georges as director of the Royal Opera, but the appointment was not made due to protests of several artists who thought it below their dignity to work under direction of a mulatto. St. George is the author of concert symphonies, string quartets, violin concerts, sonatas for violin, and harpsichord and musical comedies. He directed the private musical theater of Madame de Montesson, the wife of the Duke of Orleans, and gave music lessons to Queen Marie Antoinette. He is known for, can you imagine it? He was the teacher of the queen of the country. He is known for his fencing fight with the legendary Chevalier d'Eon in the presence of the Prince of Wales, future King George IV. He was also the first black colonel of the French army. Wow. Today, there are streets named after him in Guadeloupe and in Paris. On the example of his life, we can see a magnificent will of a black man who, despite contemptuous disregard of him by part of society, became so successful and influential through his hard work. Let's talk about another person today, Alessandro de Medici. Alessandro de Medici, the black head of the Republic of Florence. Alessandro de Medici was the first black head of state in modern history of the West. So he was like the president of a country that time, because Florence that time was an independent state. He was the first one, that was before the unification of Italy. He was the first one from a senior line of the Medici who ruled Florence, wearing the title of Duke. He was also the Duke of the Italian city of Penne. His father was either Lorenzo II de' Medici, grandson of Lorenzo the Magnificent, or Giulio de' Medici, later Pope Clement VII, nephew of Lorenzo the Magnificent. Historians suggested that he was born to a black woman who was a servant at the Medici house. In documents, she is mentioned as Simonetta da Collevicio. Alessandro's nickname was Demon, the Black, which related to his appearance. They used to call him the Black. That was the king of the country. In 1531, 19-year-old Alessandro became the ruler of the Republic of Florence with the title Capo, the head of state. The head of the Republic was a member of all government committees and also held the position of Gonfalonier of Justice for the term of his life. That's Minister of Justice as well. 1 year later, Emperor Charles V of the Holy Roman Empire granted him the hereditary title of Duke. The emperor supported Alessandro in his struggle against pro-republic Florentines. He even married off his daughter Margherita to him. This is a very significant moment. Usually in a society where racism is present, people never want to marry their daughter to a black man. It means we have something to learn from the emperor who made the greatest contribution to history among the rulers of that time. A black monk of the Franciscan order, Saint Benedict de Moor, which it was called the Black, Moor is black, also known as Saint Benedict the Black, was a monk of the Franciscan order and is now venerated in Catholic and Lutheran churches. He was born into a, Saint Benedict. I'm sure many people know about Saint Benedict, right? He was a black man. He was born into a family of African Christian slaves living in Sicily, Italy. Because of his parents' dedicated service, he was granted freedom at 18 years of age. He did not attend any school and remained illiterate for the rest of his life. Joining a local hermit group, he became their leader and made a pilgrimage to Syria and Egypt. Syria and Egypt that time used to be Christian, but that was before So although he was unable, before the Muslims took over, although he was unable to read, he was highly respected for the deepest, most extensive and insightful understanding of theology and the scripture, and was frequently consulted for guidance and advice. It is also known that miracles of healings of the sick occurred through him. They say he predicted the day he was going to die. He was beatified by Pope Benedict XVI in 1743 and canonized by Pope Pius VII in 1807. That was Pope Benedict XIV. Honoring Saint Benedict the Moor is common in the United States, Mexico, Central and South America, including Argentina, Brazil, and Venezuela. He is remembered for his self-possession and self-control and sensitivity when he was humiliated on racial grounds. Later, he was declared the patron saint of African Americans. Okay, we're going to talk about another person that contributed greatly to the culture, to the European culture, Adolf Badin, an African servant of the Swedish royal court. No, the servant, not in the terms of servant, like he was the manager of the royal court of Sweden, of the palace, like the prime minister. African Adolf Gustav Badin was an important member of the Swedish royal court. He was a butler of the Swedish queen, Louisa Ulrika of Prussia, and Princess Sophia Albertine. His real name was Kushi, and he was born in 1747 either in Africa or in St. Croix in the Caribbean Sea, which was a Danish colony. He also remembered that when he had been a child, he had lived in an unbearable hot cabin. In 1757, a captain of a Danish ship has brought Badin and later gave him as a present to the Queen of Sweden. Can you imagine? Louisa Ulrika. Under her guidance, Badin was converted to Christianity, learned French, German, and Latin. His childhood friend was the future king of Sweden, Gustav III, and other members of the royal family. They say that Badin knew all the secrets of the royal entourage. He was very straightforward and spoke on equal terms even with the king and the queen. On their deathbed, the queen sent Badin to Stockholm, giving him the keys to her personal files. That's how much she trusted him and was sure of him. Later, when these files were safely handed over to the prince and the princess, they burned them, and King Gustav III became furious and wanted to kill Badin. To this threat, he only replied, "My head is in the power of your majesty, but I could not act in a different way." In this case, we see a man of honor who, even under the threat of death, could remain faithful to his promises. On Princess Sophia Albertina's birthday, he wrote to her, "I, one of the black people unfamiliar with this country's customs, still send best wishes from my heart to our princess too." Badin played in theater and was a ballet dancer. He sometimes helped Carl Michael Bellman, a Swedish poet and composer, to write poems for special events, and some of them were published under his name. Among other things, he was a traveling ambassador, a royal forecaster, and a court chess player. His library consisted of up to 900 different volumes. He was granted several titles such as Chamberlain, that is the manager of the chamber of the palace, court secretary, ballet master, and official state servant, like state representative. He was part of a number of fraternities, orders, and Masonic lodges. He was described as an intellectual, trustworthy, and confident. His journals, written in French, are kept in the Uppsala University Library. This African is appealing not only because he was a good public servant and very versatile as a human being, but especially because of his personality. Any state leader, and indeed any superior, would like to see as part of their staff an African like this, who would not trade his honor for anything, even under the threat of death. Okay, I will stop on this one. I will stop here, and then I will maybe, do I have more time to continue? Let me see. Maybe I should do this one too before going on. Okay, let me do this one too. Juan Latino, a black Spanish scholar and poet of the 16th century. Okay, let's do Juan Latino. Juan Latino, 1518 to 1597, was born into a family of African slaves from West Africa and became a professor of rhetorics, Greek, and Latin at the University of Granada in the 16th century. He was brought to Spain from Africa. In his youth, he studied Latin and Greek and studied from the University of Granada. He became so skillful in Latin that he changed his slave name and became known as Juan Latino. He published 3 volumes of poems. His heroic poem, Austria Carmen, was devoted to the victory of Spanish warlord John of Austria in the War of the Alpujarras. He is considered the first representative of the Negro peoples to have published a collection of poems in a European language. Note that this is not the first time that Africans became outstanding individuals despite their starting conditions. It is very significant that without any fortunate starting platform, Africans have been able to achieve spectacular results. Okay, we'll go to Dumas from France later on. All right, so this is where we start. That's where we stop for today. Later on, I will show you a video. But before then, let's go ahead and share this message. Share. And also, if you want to join my mentorship program, please go ahead and go to sunlightledgerblog.com/mentorship. If you want to help us go back to Africa to do more work in Africa, to revive the glory of Africa, go to sunlightledgerblog.com/Nigeria. If you want to get my books, you can go to sunlightledgerblog.com as well /books. If you wish to come for training in History Makers training, you go to sunlightledgerblog.com/HMT. You can also read my books for free on Kindle Unlimited. So that's it for today. Tomorrow we'll continue. Thank you so much. Peace.